We're going to check in now with Cecil Hurt, the sports editor and columnist for the Tuscaloosa News and TideSports.com, and certainly wanted to get Cecil's thoughts on this topic, the Southern Rock Rushmore for Cecil Hurt. And Cecil, I guess maybe the tough part is trying to determine exactly what constitutes as Southern Rock.
Absolutely. It's the genre. Is it absolutely confined to that 1970s Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, Marshall Tucker, et cetera, Wet Willie genre, or does it start before then with rockabilly, like you're playing some Jerry Lee or some Elvis? I would say, if you're classifying people, that the drive-by truckers are Southern rock. What makes them Southern rock and not REM? That's an interesting question. I don't think most people would classify REM that way, but they're from Atlanta and Athens. What leaves them out and includes other bands? The three I would say would be on a Mount Rushmore for sure would be Dwayne Allman, Greg Allman, and Ronnie Van Zant. The fourth one is where you could get into a debate. Do you say, oh, it's Charlie Daniels, who certainly had some of that, or do you branch off? Is it Patterson Hood? That's where you. For me, when I saw the topic, the first three were automatic, and then it got into a question of what is and what isn't Southern rock.
It is, and then there's you mentioned REM. Yeah, you mentioned REM. Well, the B-52s are from Athens. What about Hootie and the Blowfish? I mean, you go from Southern rock to maybe Southern pop, or it's
what's Southern? What about ZZ Top?
Yeah, Buddy Holly.
They've got the sound. ZZ Top has the sound, and heavily influenced by Mississippi blues, and less so by what we would consider tech. They're not like Lyle Lovett. So it's a fascinating topic. But for most people, when they say Southern rock, it's that 1970s, kind of frozen in time, Atlanta rhythm section. Lots of bands that toured around here for a lot of years. Some of them still banging it out on the road. But the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner are, if you do it by band, they're in. And you can debate the other two.
Yeah, they're kind of George Washington and Abe Lincoln of Rushmore, aren't they? When we talk about an automatic four.
I would say so. You can't. I can't imagine somebody who came up with a four that didn't include them. Unless they really are into rockabilly or something, like doing a rockabilly Mount Rushmore.
And then the blues come into this. I mean, that's really the origin of Southern rock and roll, like so many other genres.
It's the origin of all rock and roll.
But Eric Clapton. I mean, there's a lot you hear from Clapton, and how he was impacted by Dwayne. You hear it in his music.
Sure. I mean, it all. That's what the Rolling Stones originally were. They were just playing basically Chuck Berry, who has his own blues influences, and Black American artists from the Mississippi Delta, Muddy Waters, Alan Wolf, etc. They are the Rolling Stones because Muddy Waters' song. That's where they came from.
So you got the Dwayne and Greg Allman. You got Ronnie Van Zant. So Allman, Skinnerd for sure. I like a pick from the more modern era. I like the Patterson Hood or drive-by trucker selection, because I think in the last 10 or 15 years, no one has identified more with that than DBT.
I agree with that, and I would have them up there, even though they're what you would consider a modern day band. But they've done enough. Their body of work is substantial enough. They've been influential enough. You look where Isbell is today. That I put them up there.
There you go. Cecil Hurt with his Southern Rock Rushmore. Now that we've got the important topic out of the way, Cecil, we can talk some college football. Another pretty pertinent topic here in the South, as we both know. Alabama coming off the 62-7 win over the Ole Miss Rebels on Saturday night in Oxford. We talked about this immediately after the game up in the press box. As impressive as that offense continues to be, Cecil, it was the defense, right, that had to be the biggest statement maker of the night in Oxford.
I thought it was. I mean, when you look at what they did against Texas Tech, and I know you poo-poo and say, "Oh, Texas Tech," but that's a Power 5 team, and Ole Miss moved the ball up and down the field all day long against Texas Tech. They hit one big play against Alabama, and that was it. I mean, that was literally the only. They had a run where Tommy got loose, and they had one pass down the sideline. They didn't get in the red zone again after that first play, and that's a dominant performance against anybody. And on the road against a good offensive, what we think will be a good offensive team, even going forward, that's a heck of a performance.
You asked Nick Saban yesterday about the rat poison component that potentially could come into play. It's interesting because we heard that used by Nick immediately after last year's A&M game in College Station. The Aggies now set to return to Tuscaloosa this weekend. Given the sort of high-profile nature that Ole Miss game was, could it? I don't think it's a problem this week because, in my opinion, A&M is probably top to bottom a more legitimate opponent than Ole Miss was. But I guess that's the question: is Texas A&M, in your opinion, a quality enough opponent to take advantage of maybe a mental slip if it does come into play for Alabama this week?
Could be. Mon's a pretty good quarterback. They've got better athletes than Ole Miss, top to bottom. If you stacked up 85 against 85, you'd take A&M's 85 every time. Even though Ole Miss has some high-profile guys, Brown, Metcalf, Greg Little, Benito Jones. I like Benito Jones as a defensive lineman, but it runs thin pretty quickly. Whereas A&M has a solid roster. They can't help but have fun. You can say what you want to about Kevin Sumlin. That's just that Houston to Dallas area that includes College Station and kind of the megalopolis. They're going to have good players, and they've got good players. And hung in there, certainly weren't intimidated by Clemson, certainly didn't get overwhelmed by that very highly hyped Clemson defensive line. Now, they were playing at home. They did sort of – Clemson kind of controlled the game until the end where it got dicey for them, but A&M hung in there. And so that should tell you something about what they can do. So, yeah, again, Alabama goes out, turns it over 4 or 5 times, has a blunder in the kicking game. I thought the biggest sequence of the Ole Miss game was when Alabama fumbled. Ole Miss couldn't do anything. In good field position for Ole Miss, and Ole Miss couldn't do anything. But A&M might be able to. And so, yeah, it's a tougher opponent. Now it's in Tuscaloosa, so we'll see. The heat will balance out. It's going to be hot. Alabama players practice in the heat, so do Texas A&M players. So College Station gets plenty of heat. That's not going to be a factor.
Cecil, this quarterback situation at Alabama, are we at a point where we can make some sort of definitive come to some definitive sort of thoughts on how this is going to go moving forward? Jalen Hurts has now played in 3 games. We know that Tua is the undisputed starter and will continue to play in that position as needed as games wear on moving forward. But with Jalen specifically, are you at a point where you feel like definitively you know how this is going to go for the junior quarterback the remainder of the season?
No, because you don't know how it's going to go this Saturday. But I think Jalen is being a team guy and playing the role that he's assigned, and he wants to play like any football player. he wants to play as much as he can. I don't know that he's limited himself, and I just don't know exactly where he is on that 1 year, 2 year option. And as I've said before, this year and what's going on at Alabama, and we'll have to see what plays out. But I'm going to give a random example. That may be playing this year and being a part of that and being part of a real part of a championship team, which he is at this point. And just say, no, I don't want to do that anymore, so I can get a second year at Texas Tech. I don't know that that's exactly what Jalen wants to do. First of all, he's not guaranteed anything at his next stop. If he chooses to transfer, he may choose to he may love Alabama and choose to finish his career at Alabama. But, you do have a future to consider. His NFL situation isn't defined yet either. So he's got a lot to think about, and that's fair. But right to this point, seems like he wants to participate on this team, so I don't anticipate that changing immediately. We'll see what happens Saturday.
And I guess when you look at it, Alabama, a 27-point favorite this weekend over what looks to be a solid A&M team. The opportunities to play, Cecil, look like they're going to be there just about every week.
Well, what if you can play what if for hypothetical? But what if that game had been 14-7 in Oxford at halftime and Tua cramps up? What if that happens down there? What if that happens Saturday? Good to have Jalen ready to go. So, million different things. As I said at the start of the season, there were 464 quadrillion possibilities. We're down to about 18 trillion now, but still, different ways that this could play out. But I hadn't seen anything from Jalen other than he wants to participate.
In terms of this LSU win over Auburn on Saturday, as far as being surprised by that outcome, where were you at on that after LSU knocked off Auburn in Jordan-Hare Stadium?
I didn't get to see much of it. We're in Oxford, and you understand the logistics of it, and then I saw a little bit more of it Sunday. It's amazing that Alabama fans for years grumbled about game manager. Quarterbacks are game manager. McElroy's a game manager. AJ's a game manager, which AJ's probably better than that. I think AJ's better than Burrow. But that's what LSU needs. Guy that, he made some throws and didn't turn it over, didn't hurt them. Being very composed out there. He had to make a fourth quarter drive to win. Pass interference, maybe not, but he had him in there with a chance. So that's what they've been looking for. They're extremely excited with him and with the transfer kicker, who's been good for him. I still want to see a little bit more from them, but they just surround even an average or slightly above average quarterback with really good talent. I mean, really athletic talent. That defense is no joke. Even though Auburn did score some points, but those games are always so perplexing. To the one that got Les Miles fired 2 years ago, the one in Baton Rouge last year. Auburn's playing. Auburn, the way Auburn approaches those games, I can't quite figure out. But Gus Malzahn's won one game and been successful, so it's his team to run. But it seems like they could put the boot on LSU the last 2 years and didn't do it.
When you look at Auburn's record, I guess, against elite or legitimate competition since the end of the 2013 season, Cecil, I think it's right at 500 in those type of games.
It is.
So with that,
I will give Auburn a little credit for stepping up and playing the Clemsons and the Washingtons. And, you can pad that record a little bit without doing that, and they've chosen to do that. And so I do want to give them credit for that. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
But so with that and you're right, they have. But again, talking Power 5 type competition here, the record is what it is.
Sure.
In your opinion, was the decision to give Gus the deal that Auburn did, was it essentially based on 2 wins and the potential for him wanting to go to Arkansas and lose to teams like North Texas? I mean, what are we basing this on? The $7 million a year.
Timing, a clever agent, and the tremendous value that wins, even sort of singular, isolated wins over Georgia and Alabama, have for the Auburn fan base. If they have a coach that's competitive in those games, that win those games, sometimes there's a tendency to want to hang on to that coach. It's when Georgia, or particularly Alabama, reels off 4 or 5 wins in a row, and people start to get nervous that Auburn, which has never been reluctant to spend money either on paying a guy or getting rid of a guy, gets antsy. I think that, combined with the Arkansas situation, because I don't know who else in America besides Arkansas is really going to make a concerted run at Gus. I don't know that maybe somebody would, but I don't know that anybody's out there thinking, well, we'll pay him $8 million. I don't think that's happening. So I'm not going to speak for them. They understand what the limit. The trustees, the athletic director, whoever runs the thing at Auburn, understands what the limitations of their program are, just like Alabama has certain limitations. And if they felt like that was what the market bears, then that's what the market bears. But if they have another 8-4, that's going to be an interesting discussion that they're going to have. I'm not going to contribute to it, but they'll have down there.
Especially if those 4 include losses to Georgia and Alabama in the month of November. And I think you hit on it. Timing is everything. Wins over Georgia and Alabama at home. Then the Arkansas opening, it was the perfect storm for Gus and his representation. And I'll say this too, though. If you beat Alabama once every 4 years, and you can even include Georgia in this now, right? You beat those 2 teams once every 4 years. What percentile is that going to put you among college football coaches out there, Cecil? Probably top 10%?
Good, 25%. That's it's not running 25% nationwide. I'll guarantee you that.
So from that standpoint, it definitely makes some sense. Cecil, as always, really appreciate you joining us here on the program. Great work, as always, for so many years at the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. Give Cecil a follow on Twitter at Cecil Hurt. You'll find him there on social media. Thanks a lot, Cecil.
Thanks, Travis.